Okay, I'm going to hop in with Boomba and Hannah, make sure that they can record, because I guess if your co-host still can't record, I don't know.
Sid, do you have original sound on right now?
No, why?
Because it sounds like you're a cracker.
My
Like,
voice is just like really bad. I got cleared by Izzy.
yeah, it's really weird.
Well, you sound like you're a cracker.
Oh no, I didn't mean it like that. No, I meant it like a cracker. That's like cracking. Not
Yeah,
like...
yeah.
Okay, yeah, maybe not the best choice of word, but we'll work through that.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, shouldn't have used the hard R, I guess. No, there's a lot of pain associated with that word.
Oh
Anyway,
yeah, I was really pained when you said that.
yeah.
No, I'm gonna have to title line you or whatever.
Yeah,
Okay.
just drop the debater.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Counter interpretation. Crackers taste good. I like crackers.
All right,
Yeah,
you want to
I'm in the doc. What did you read last time?
deterrence?
Probably the environmental racism stuff, I guess, because that's kind of what that
Sure.
one card was. Okay.
Yeah, wait.
Um,
Before we start, should we like the topic? What's the topic?
it's still nukes.
Okay,
Oh wait, no,
yeah.
this is subsidies. This is subsidies,
Okay,
not
yeah. So
nukes.
the topic is fossil fuel subsidies that the U.S. should eliminate them. This is an
Yeah.
argument about environmental racism. Does anyone think, at the very least, they could ask questions, if not answer questions? It would be great if we had volunteers for both. Um, but ask or answer questions today in the mock cross-X afterwards.
No volunteers. You're gonna make your G be the teacher who just randomly picks on kids. It's like you.
Yes, that's
Just
exactly what we're gonna do.
read the argument first, and then people will probably have more confidence that they understand.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. So if you have a paper and pen and you want to flow this, please do, because we want to make sure you're flowing well. Remember to keep your columns narrow and your spacing large. If you need to do the finger trick in between, that's helpful. So you get like a visual. You can learn like how wide you actually should leave things apart. Okay. Is
Have we
anybody
discussed what the finger trick is?
what?
We discussed the finger trick.
I mean, I just told it last time. You just 2 or 3 fingers.
Oh, okay. I must have not been there. My bad.
That's fine.
I think
Okay.
Yash is AFK.
Maybe he's getting a paper and pen.
Yeah, maybe.
Wow, those people really like that chair.
Yeah. The guy likes the chair. The woman, she's maybe upset.
He's jealous of
Guys.
the chair.
Yeah. She's concerned for her man and his affinity for chairs.
Okay, we'll wait till Yash gets back and then we can go.
Daniel, do you have any questions on link chains since you missed Friday?
No, because I'm pretty sure I wouldn't understand them either way.
Oh yeah. Did you watch the video?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say if you're not understanding them,
I'm probably gonna rewatch it just to make sure.
yeah, I would rewatch it and take notes on it. Because link chains are just like really important to understanding arguments. Yeah, they're just really important to understanding arguments and how they work, and we use them a lot. And then if you have and then I would take the quiz also. And then if you're having any trouble, we can like Rajiv Jackson and I can work with you on Discord one time.
Got it. Thanks.
Yash is just like gone, so I'm just gonna start. Other people have paper and pens. Okay. Contention 1 is environmental racism. Much of the fossil fuel industry will cease to exist if subsidies are eliminated. That's Chen and Dortchich, 18. Half of U.S. oil is dependent on subsidies. In the Williston Basin in North Dakota, 59% of resources are dependent. In the Permian Basin of Texas, 40% are dependent. Next, fossil fuel plants disproportionately and unfairly hurt African Americans. Brown and Williams, 19. 68% of African Americans live within 30 miles of a coal-fired power plant, tied to birth defects, heart disease, asthma, lung disease, learning disabilities, and lower property values, all disproportionately affecting African Americans. African Americans hold only 1.1% of energy-related jobs and gain only 0.01% of the revenue. Black Americans are most harmed by the industry, yet they have no access to the industry's profit. And the impact to structural violence in the form of racism. Racism is the enemy of an equal society which cannot be ignored when weighing impacts. Mimi 2000. The struggle against racism is a struggle to be undertaken without concessions. One cannot let the monster into the house. To give it merely a foothold means to augment its bestial partness. To accept the racist universe to the slightest degree is to endorse fear, injustice, and violence. One cannot found a legislative order on racism because racism signifies the exclusion of the other and his or her subjection to violence and domination. All unjust society contains within itself the seeds of its own death. The ethical choice commands the political choice. If the contractual principle is not accepted, then only conflict, violence, and destruction will be our lot. Okay. Wasn't super long.
All right. Any volunteers having heard the content?
Yeah. Can we see everyone's flows first, and then we could maybe try across it?
Yeah.
So just hold up your flows to the camera, and we'll take a look.
Nice spacing, Praj.
Praj, very good.
Yeah.
Emily and Silas make it look more like Praj.
Yeah, flows look organized, just like they need spacing.
Column width is good for both of you, but yeah. The reason you want spacing is ideally if your opponent's really going to attack a point, they're going to respond at multiple levels to one argument. So if they make 3 responses to one card and you don't have room to put those 3 responses, your flow is going to get so crammed, you're not going to be able to look at it in a round and actually understand what's happening. So when you have spacing like Praj, you can write a lot more words next to each argument, which allows you to better respond to it in the future.
Because also the biggest power move in rounds when somebody goes 3 responses to this and then they list them, and then if you drop them, they're like, remember my 3rd response. The other 2 doesn't matter. That's you just feel really dumb then.
Or when you say 3 responses but only read 1.
Yeah.
I think, okay, should we just pick people?
Yeah, I used an RNG already, and it picked Silas to cross X. So.
Or you can even have people just do one question. They don't have to do
cool.
Okay, yeah.
I like that actually.
Everyone ask me one cross.
Yeah, everyone look at your flow and prepare one question you think.
Jackson, have them ask somebody else. So that. Yeah. Because I can.
Should they each ask one and answer one? I don't know.
Yeah, let's do that. Just
Actually, no. We can just have them all ask me one, and then I'll ask, or Rajiv can ask all of them one.
Okay.
So at least they get a good response and a good question. It's not just ask question, whatever.
Well, I don't know. I think it's less intimidating to me.
Yeah. Why don't we can just have them? We can have them do it with each other.
Okay.
So here, let me go back to my RNG. So I know that Silas, Praj, Emily, you guys flowed. Dan, Yash, were either of you two also flowing?
Kind of for the first time, so I probably don't know.
It's fine. Do you think you get the gist of the argument and why you would be making it?
Yeah.
Okay. So why don't here, the list randomizer so Silas and Emily, why don't you ask each other a question each? And Praj and Dan, why don't you ask each other a question each? If that's okay.
When you're asking the question, imagine you're attacking the case I just read, and when you're answering, imagine you're defending. So you'll do both as you ask each other questions.
Or just getting clarification is also fine if you're missing something.
Who did you say is going first, Rajiv?
Whoever's ready can go, but the first pairing was Silas and Emily.
Okay. How is it that African Americans are affected any worse than anyone else by pollution from fossil fuels?
I don't remember exactly what card it was, but one card stated that African Americans just live much closer to oil plants on average, so that's why it would be worse. Should I just ask a question?
Yeah.
So now
Okay.
imagine you're attacking the argument.
All right. My question is, wouldn't there be other reasons that African Americans are facing such bad consequences, such as like other structural violence, such as healthcare and jobs and education, not just like living close to oil facilities?
Well, of course there are other forms of racism, but as the Mini 2000 card said, like any racism is too much. Like if you can do anything to stop any amount of it, then you have to.
Okay.
All right, I'll ask a question. So my question is, in your last card, you said that racism is the enemy when you're away. But if I were to prove that death is worse, how would you win that racism was the enemy?
Can you just
Yeah.
Oh,
You're
prove
really
it quiet?
If you just repeat
Also,
that.
with you injecting, do you guys want to give feedback after individual like cross-exes, or do you want to?
I mean,
give
it's
them-
pretty short. We can just go through
There
it.
are two
Okay.
cross-exes happening. Yeah.
all right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Just louder.
Mhm.
Okay. Let me re-ask the question. So your last card says that racism is the enemy and you should weigh it higher whenever we're weighing. But if I were to prove that death is worse and the people's lives, not just the African Americans, cause global catastrophes, how would you respond? How would you say that a racism should be weighed higher? Daniel?
Yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Okay. Why is racism worse than death?
I guess because racism will, if you build something on inequality, you'll eventually lead to its collapse, and that collapse will probably be by violence, and that'll create a lot more death. I don't know what I'm doing. Is that okay?
That was
Yeah,
okay.
that's
Yeah. Pro's just the question was a bit long worded, but
Yeah.
it was really just why is racism
Why
worse
is
than death?
racism worse?
Now you can ask Pro's a question.
Yeah. I guess my question would be, if African Americans aren't receiving the vast majority of the profits, who is receiving the vast majority of the profits?
Profits from
energy.
what?
Like who's getting all the profits from the energy corporations? Or is it the energy corporations that's receiving the profits?
People who like run the companies regarding like fossil fuels and stuff, right? So I'm confused. What is your question? Like your question is saying
What kind of people are receiving the vast majority of the profits then?
I don't know. It's not in the card or context anywhere.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know what I'm doing.
I kind of just avoided the question because
I mean, you can always just say non-black people because
True. If I said white people versus non-black people.
But how do you know it's white people though? What if it's just like it turns out they're all a different minority?
just say non-black people, and that's what's important, and that's a good answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I think it's good that with all four questions, I can definitely see an intent in why you asked the question, like sort of an argument or strategy in the 1 and C you wanted to set up. So I thought that was good. With the answers, I think that you guys didn't concede too much ground, which is probably the biggest pitfall in cross-ex is you're going to sometimes if you give your opponent what they want, it's going to be easy for them to win. So don't give them what they want.
Yep.
Nice.
I think that was good. Everyone seemed to know what they were doing.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Any questions for us? Okay.
Awesome.
That was nice. Very
Framework time?
participatory.
Also, something that just like is a very small detail to point out. If you notice, Daniel's question was very pointed and very small. So it's like it wasn't like because if you notice, like Silas's question was like, why are Black people disproportionately hurt, which is a very broad question. And Emily on that could probably take 30 seconds to 45 seconds talking about how like America is this whole unjust system and the fossil fuel industry is just like a microcosm of that and all that. But with Daniel's question, it was specifically asking about the warrant behind the card. I don't know the tag for it, but the card that talks about them being disproportionately hurt. So by that, Praj cannot go for like 30 or 45 seconds. It puts them in a very small corner, and that was like a very good thing to do.
Yep. Okay, framework presentation time.
Aren't we waiting for like PFers?
Yeah, I'll.
Okay.
Also, Sid, you know, like the activity that we discussed in like the staff chat. Do you want to start with that, or like?
I was going to say we should watch the thing from the Good Place first, and then.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to screen share that, Rajiv?
Yeah, sure, if you want.
Yeah, the times. I actually no. I'll screen share it because I have it the time pulled up on my Netflix account.
Yeah.
Are we starting with that?
Yeah, let's just wait for the other people. I'll hop in PF and see.
Yeah, all right. I'll pause for now. We can we'll call this a break. All right, so like any responsible debate camp, we're gonna watch some Netflix. Yeah. So just watch this clip, pay attention, see what you think.
They don't describe it. Does everybody here know what the trolley problem is?
That's the one with who do you send the trolley running over, right?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So this will talk about some of the iterations of that and
Here, let's try this.
wait, give me 1 second, sorry. Just
Sid, we
Wait.
can't hear it.
Sid, we have no audio and no video.
Yeah.
Yeah, Netflix doesn't let you video record it.
Oh, that's so sad. Okay, I'll find you on YouTube.
Yeah.
Good place trolley problems.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, it won't show the medical
Now
one.
maybe
but-
there's a more concrete approach.
Is this working?
Yeah.
Let's try this.
Sid, when you mute yourself, we can't hear the video.
My problem. My bad. Sorry.
Michael, what did you do? I made the trolley problem real so we could see how the ethics would actually play out. There are 5 workers on this track and 1 over there. Here are the levers to switch the tracks. Make a choice. The thing is, I mean, ethically speaking, no time to make a decision. Well, it's tricky. I mean, on the one hand, if you ascribe to a purely utilitarian worldview. Okay, so. What did we learn? Chitty? Talk it out, buddy. What do we think?
He thinks he just killed a bunch of people with a trolley.
It's just a simulation. I would never make you kill real people.
Oh, well, that's reassuring, because some of the parts of the fake people flew into my mouth.
Michael, can we just go back to the classroom?
We never left. Here, I'll show you.
Look, see, buddy, none of this was real.
Well, they're fake people, but their pain is real. Does that make sense? There have to be stakes, or it's just another thought experiment. This is awful. You specifically asked me if there was a way I could connect with the material more. I'm trying, you guys.
Sorry. You're right. I want to help you understand this.
Thank you, Chief. So, let's try again. Oh, I thought maybe we would have a discussion. Now, the whole point is to play out the scenario in real time.
Wait, Judy, what's your decision?
Okay, I can do this. I am choosing to switch tracks, so that way I only kill 1 person. Oh, I forgot to tell you, this is the scenario where you actually know one of the people. It's your friend Henry there. JD! How are you, mate? Eric, move! Oh, nice trolley. I can't, JD. My boots are stuck in the track. Eric, move! Anyway, again, just a simulation. An almost impossibly lifelike simulation.
Would someone's foot really fly off their body like that? That was kind of cool. Ethically speaking.
Tony's confusing.
So that's actually like a very good example of debate. Like how we view things in very abstract, but ethics and morals are very like should be very applicable. So like a good example of stuff.
Yeah, so we're all like Cheaty, and we're trying to explain our like theory to like Michael's, right? Like the tall white guy. Yeah. But anyway.
Okay.
guess-
So we're gonna do like basically have you guys not in like a structure, but in like kind of how you do in school, like crack seminar, just like debate what you would do in a trolley problem situation.
Yeah.
So we'll go
Kind of
through
like what we did on the first day.
Yeah, so we'll go through the first iteration, just talking about very basic. One person on one track, 5 people on the other tracks, and then we'll go from there, making it more and more complicated.
Debate.
My honest opinion is I would run the 5 people over and then pull out my gun and shoot the guy on the other side, and then they all die because Death good.
Thank you,
That's
Raj.
To an argument I've heard, which is take the car and drift it across both tracks so you can hit all the people.
Enter drift mode.
Anyone else? Just
I'll probably kill the 5 people.
why?
Wait, my bad. The 3 people. They'd probably kill 3 people.
What?
There's
Oh,
one
isn't it
person
5
on
plus
what?
3?
It's
Oh, it's
5
one
versus
and
5 and
1.
1.
Oh, okay. I'll kill the 1 person then.
Why?
No cap. I don't know. I've wanted to kill someone, and
No.
Okay.
What a guy.
This is being recorded, guys. Just reminding
These
you
are
all.
all the wrong answers.
I'm
Okay,
joking.
I have the
don't
correct
want to kill
answer.
someone.
All
I will
right, but
blow
why,
up the trolley
Lawrence?
with myself on it. It's genius. I take no lives except my own.
Yeah, you wouldn't stop the trolley. It would just keep going.
With my rocket propelled grenade launcher that I carry everywhere.
All right.
I think that'll take care of the
No
trolley.
shortcuts. Is this anyway? Wait, Lawrence, what was your actual justification for why? Switch the lever.
Oh no, I'd switch it because I don't know. I think I'll outweigh 4 people's lives over like my moral dilemma. You know.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I wouldn't love to run over one person, but I definitely, like, I can deal with that. I couldn't be able to deal with, like, killing 4 people. So.
All right.
But the opposite side to that is like you're directly killing the person by switching the lever. But if you don't do anything, then technically it was their fault from the beginning. But by you switching the lever, you would consciously like be killing that one person. So because of that, that's like that difference.
Okay, I have my own variation of the trolley problem that I guess came up with.
I have a question.
Go
Yeah,
for it.
sure.
If you kill everyone, won't there be no witnesses? So you have like no.
Well, I think
reason
the
to,
question
get in
is
trouble?
like, there's no laws, right? Like, don't worry about, getting caught or whatever. You're just trying to prevent people, or, you're trying to be ethical, right? Rather than be like, do something legal. So you're on a trolley. It's either going to crash into 5 people if you do nothing. If you pull a lever, it's going to crash into 1 person. Like, let's say either way, you're not going to be charged with a crime necessarily. But which one would you say is more moral? Which would you say is the better choice?
Oh, because then if like the 5 people think I chose them because I'm like mean to them, then I could say no, I killed him as well. The other person. If I killed the one person, I could also
So
kill the
to
other.
be impartial, you'd kill everyone?
Mhm.
Suppose you couldn't kill everyone.
No shortcuts.
The one person,
And why?
because there's only one person.
And so, like, you want to have there be less deaths in general?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's another variation. The trolley's barreling down a track towards your best friend. And you can pull a lever to divert it to kill one stranger. So it's one life for one life. But right now it's going to kill your best friend. And you could have it kill a random person. Do you pull the lever?
Could this random person be someone related to you?
I mean,
It's
it
just
could
a
be, but,
random
like,
person.
statistically, they
random?
won't be.
So, like,
like-
there are 7 billion people. So you just pull one out of a hat. You take all 7 billion names, you put them in a hat, you shake the hat, you pull one of the names out, and it's that person.
Does age matter?
Assume they're the same age.
Okay.
And then you give the hat back to the giant.
Yeah.
Do you pull the lever and save your friend?
If I were in that situation, I would pull it. It's just morally, I would pull it.
Why? What morals?
My moral is that friendship matters, and this person, knowing that they brushed by death, must do good for the world as a result of me pulling that lever. So, I don't know. I would just, I morally, I would say that I would choose my friend in that scenario, no matter what. Like, I don't know. It's a simulation. I would pull it.
It's not a simulation. It's real life.
No, I know, but like, if
Their
you were-
pain is real.
whatever.
Yeah. And that's like a thing you have to do when you're talking about framework and just debate in general. Don't view things as a simulation, view them as like real life and stuff. And that also like it helps you understand arguments better, helps you debate better, helps you be more authentic and actually understand things. That's just like a side note.
Okay.
Anyone else have thoughts about that?
Well, you
Yeah,
pull the
I see.
lever because of your selfish desire for friendship.
Yeah, I like that answer. What's up, Lawrence?
I
Just
I
like-
pull it. Oh, because there's a higher
Go ahead, go
chance the stranger's a serial killer. Because I'm pretty sure I'm not friends with a serial killer. So probabilistically,
Never know.
I'm actually doing the world some good, right?
That's an interesting way to look at it. I like it, though.
Or maybe all of Lawrence's friends are serial killers, right? Like, is your
I
friend
mean-
group more or less likely to be the serial killer variety, Lawrence?
It
Because I'd
has
argue they might be more likely.
I mean, also there are like positive qualities that your friend group might not have a high frequency of, like positive value, positive social good that a person could provide.
I have a question. What are
Yeah,
best
just like
friend,
find out.
best friend know that we made that choice, or would they be like, they
Yeah,
wouldn't know?
they'd see you do it.
They would see it, then I'd kill my best friend.
What?
What if we don't have any friends?
What would you have done if they hadn't been able to see it?
I wouldn't have killed my best friend. Because if my best friend saw me kill someone, he wouldn't want to be my best friend.
Genius.
Oh, and then if you kill your best friend, the person you save will become your new best friend. 'cause You save their
Exactly.
life. Okay, yeah, it's a win-win situation.
I mean, I don't know. Wait, but in the
If
same
you just like want a new best friend. I mean,
But what if you
Yeah.
realize you don't like the other person's personality? Then you're best friends with someone you don't like.
Well,
Yeah.
at least I
When
didn't.
you get another
kill my
trolley
friend.
and you tie him to the tracks.
Yeah, I mean, also though, like, are you really like murdering? I don't know. I don't know if your best friend would consider that you're murdering the other person. If you know that you say that when you kill your best friend, the other person says that you're saving their life. I don't see how that's necessarily different from the way you save your best friend's life by choosing to pull.
I could lie to that person and say there's no way for me to change it.
Yeah, I guess you could lie. I don't know.
Okay.
I think it's also
Why?
like, a matter of perspective because, like earlier, Emily was saying, like, oh, then I wouldn't be killing the 4 people if she didn't change if she changed the tracks. But then Praj was viewing it as like, at least he was giving the perspective of if you change it, then you kill the one person. And like a lot of people view, like there's a lot of people who view that if you change the tracks, you're killing somebody, but if you don't change it, you're not killing anybody because you're not affecting the situation. So yeah. Let's skip the fat man. Let's talk about the doctor scenario because I think that's
I think maybe we should just move on to the framework presentation.
I don't know. We have time. Whatever.
yeah, we still have some time. Let's just because I think this is one that like is the most challenging of them all. So if you have 5 people who need like organ transplants, would you kill one healthy person to transplant their organs to save those 5 people's lives?
Like involuntarily. Like you snatch them off the street, tie them to a table, cut them open, and harvest their organs.
Yeah, personal pleasure too. Like, what do you mean? That's a win-win right here. We're saving 5 people and I can enjoy myself.
Once again, this is being recorded. I'd like to remind you.
Yeah, I didn't.
He's already been
realize that-
reminded, so
like,
I don't think
I
don't
didn't
think,
think
it's,
there was a wrong answer to the question, but Lawrence, I think you found it.
Yeah, I think I would. Like, if I knew how to harvest organs, which is, but yeah. I think there's also a chance that they like would. I mean, they probably wouldn't want to be killed, but like, they might like be okay with that. They might say like, yeah, I'll sacrifice myself for these 5 people. I don't know.
Question.
Okay.
Would it be on a time limit to like find the person and kill them, or?
Just assume the scenario works.
Ooh, I would do it because I could say chop chop, we're on a time limit.
Okay.
Okay. I think the better question is like, I don't know, like you guys might be viewing this from the point of view of like the doctor or like the barber of Fleet Street or whoever you imagine yourself to be. But like imagine you lived in a society where like the government said like, okay, whenever we need organs, we're just going to kill a random citizen, take their organs and use the organs, in whatever context we need. Would you want to live in that society where like your sort of life was precarious? I don't know. I think that's a different way to look at it, at least.
For the people who said that they would harvest the organs, should the United States enact a compulsory organ harvesting program? Yes?
That'd be a cool death.
Isn't that like the Kant's categorical imperative? Like, if it's true in one situation, then it should be true in every situation.
Yeah, but maybe it's not true, and maybe you can instead switch your opinion instead of enacting compulsory organ harvesting.
So, like, Kant, I don't think would be for compulsory organ harvesting because it violates, like, an individual's autonomy. So, like, the demand for organs might at some point, like, exceed the supply of organs, and then you would just be sacrificing people for a society that doesn't exist. It's like how lies, if applied with infinite regress, devalue truth. Similarly, organ donation would devalue like life. But what's up, Yash?
I have a question. Could we make it? I would do this in only one situation. If whenever I die, they say chop chop on the time limit.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
That'd be a cool death.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's more about the moral situation. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, we can move into this presentation then.
Framework time.
Yeah.
That's just a little taste of what frameworks seem to be like. We did the trolley problem. So here is a very nice diagram that Sid drew for all of you in Google Slides with all of his artistic abilities. So the framework, which is the glasses, you're kind of trying to put a pair of glasses onto the judge and say, this is how you should view the arguments in a round. You're trying to say, here are the lenses through which you will decide what impacts matter and what impacts do not matter. So if you win framework and you say, oh, only this upholding this one principle matters, and even if your opponent has a ton of impacts they think are important, but they don't access like anything under your principle, then it's very hard for them to win the round. So especially in LD, framework is going to be really, really, really important in winning rounds. As if you don't win framework, it is way harder to win because then you have to somehow say that your impacts uphold your opponent's value better than their own impacts do. So winning framework is just a good idea. You should always try to win framework, more or less.
And what does a lens do to light? It focuses it. So similarly, if you win framework, you focus the debate on some narrow impact, which normally helps you.
Yeah. Yep. So here's the terminology of how it's going to be used in LD. Framework is divided in traditional LD into two parts, the value and the value criterion. Think of the value as saying, this is what we, wait for it, value. This is what we say is important. And the value criterion, imagine it almost like a measuring stick to say, how have we achieved this? Some litmus test, some sort of test that we can run, some sort of thing that we can measure to determine whether or not we've upheld our value. So if we say our value is like a utilitarian philosophy, where we're trying to maximize the most good for the most number of people, our value criterion might be something like, oh, economic growth, or life expectancy, or health outcomes, or GDP per capita, or something where we can say, generally, when this thing increases, we have done the most good for the most number of people. Maybe my value is like life. And then maybe my value criterion is like deaths per capita or something. We're like, oh, if more people die, then we have less life. So we should like minimize deaths, and therefore we've achieved life. But sometimes you can get more specific. So if you're valuing something like individual autonomy, maybe your value criterion is like freedom from state oppression. You say that the best way to maximize autonomy is to free ourselves from an oppressive state. So then you like read contentions that say voting one way on the resolution will limit the power of the state to be oppressive. So you can have very broad value criterions or very narrow value criterions that direct more to your contentions and your impacts. A value on its own will not function. A value criterion on its own will not function. You need to have both in order to say this is what we should care about, and this is how we determine whether or not we upheld that. And there are two general types of frameworks that you can run, consequentialist and non-consequentialist or deontological frameworks, where essentially a consequentialist framework says, let's take a look at the consequences of our actions. And then we can weigh those consequences through the value and see if we've upheld that value through the value criterion. And a non-consequentialist, or another big word, deontological framework, instead looks at the intent and methods of our action to determine whether or not it's good. This is essentially saying that the ends do not justify the means. We need to look at how we are performing actions. So a kind of rudimentary example of a non-consequentialist framework, like let's say you're valuing truth and you say that lying is always bad. If you had to choose between making a lie to save like 10,000 lives or telling the truth, a non-consequentialist framework would say always tell the truth because it's just like a good thing. And if everyone lied all the time, then like society would collapse and nothing would work. So instead, we should adopt a framework that is always morally permissible, in this case, by always doing something like telling the truth. Any? Oh, yeah, you can go.
I was just going to bring up something about consequentialist. These apply in round when you're talking like, so earlier when we were talking about that environmental racism argument, and I think Emily had asked, are there other causes of racism? And then Silas said, that one card says that we always have to fight it. So this is very important, especially when you're talking about arguments over like structural oppression and things like that. It's a small semantics thing. You don't say reducing, you almost always say minimizing or opposing, because chances are this one resolution won't be able to solve this giant systematic system of oppression. But the thing is that you always want to oppose it under a non-consequentialist framework, which means that you don't have to solve anything, but you have to do everything you can to oppose. So that's where it really starts to apply in rounds. Also, just like a general example of framework less in the abstract is when we're talking about the trolley problem, when Emily was talking about like the whole, if you pull the lever, you kill the 4 people, and you save the 4 people in if you don't pull the lever, you end up killing like the 5 people. But Praj was saying if you just let it be and don't do anything, then you're not killing anybody. But if you pull the lever, you kill the 1 person. That's an example of framework, because the way they view things and they view the different situation shapes how they view what's morally right in the situation. So that's an abstract view.
Yeah. So like in that example, what Praj was saying would be non-consequentialist. He's saying we should look at the intent of my actions. So if I have to actively make a decision and that decision kills a person, then that decision was bad and I should not have done it. Whereas Emily's more consequentialist framework would say, no, we should look at the on-net lives lost at the end of everything. And if your action, even if it kills someone, saves more people than it kills, then that's a good thing. Now, before we move on, do we have any questions, whether it's words or just ideas and concepts? Because this stuff is really, really, really important. This is what sets LD apart from other debate events. So if you have any questions, please ask them now.
Could you give an example of a value and a value criterion? Because I feel like I'm still kind of I don't really understand.
So kind of to piggyback off an example I gave earlier, let's say you're valuing individual autonomy, right? You're saying we should do things that maximize my autonomy as an individual, my ability to make free decisions separate from outside influences, right?
Yeah.
My individual liberty is good. You could have a value criterion that is very specific, in this example I used earlier, which is say minimizing state oppression. You say the state is an actor who does the most oppression and takes away the most autonomy from people. So if we minimize the role that the state plays in our lives, we maximize autonomy. And then you're going to read contentions about how voting one way on the resolution limits the power of the state. And you say that this upholds your value of autonomy.
Oh, okay. So does the value criterion, like a lot of the time, go into what the question is, or like what the prompt is, you know?
The resolution?
The resolution?
Yeah, the resolution. I completely forgot the word, but like...
What do you mean by go into?
So like, let's say like, for one, it's like, should we abolish like state governments? And like, would the value criterion be like, we should abolish state? Like,
here's the relationship that I would describe between the resolution and the value criterion. So the resolution, through your links, internal links, and impacts, will point to something. The value criterion needs to point to the same thing. So your value criterion needs to match up with your impacts, which is more important. So like, as you know, we said earlier, a value criterion is a measuring stick for your value. And so if, you know, your impacts are not able to be weighed or measured by that system, then, you know, your impacts don't have weight within the realm. But naturally, if, you know, your impacts are, I guess, you know, related to your framework, related to your value criterion, then you're able to weigh them under your moral framework. Obviously, you get to your impacts by reading links to the resolution, right? But it's not often just like the resolution is about education, so I'm going to value education. You know, you can value something which is morally good in the abstract. Oh, yeah. I like this case. But yeah, you just need to justify why that's morally good, and then show that, you know, if you were to do the resolution, it would produce a moral good, or, you know, if you were to avoid the resolution, it would produce a
So here's an example of an actual case that Silas wrote. So this was on the states ought to abolish the nuclear weapons topic. So this is an AF saying that states should, and it's saying that the value is transformative pacifism, and then defined it by saying this is essentially a framework that just says we should always take actions that reject violence and war as a possibility. We should just like not let those thoughts cross our mind. We should always act peacefully and never even like prepare for contingencies of war. Like that's a bad idea in and of itself. Then we have a value criterion of increasing positive peace. So we say that this thing called positive peace, which is essentially like you can define peace in 2 ways, which is like the absence of war or like the establishment of an order that is like inherently peaceful. So it's not just saying, oh, we don't have war right now. It's saying actually we have like structures that are designed to maintain peace. That's what we call positive peace. So the value criterion is saying when we increase positive peace, we uphold a value of transformative pacifism. We act in a way in accordance with the value of transformative pacifism. And then all the contentions talk about how nuclear weapons like directly lead to like maybe it's a peaceful world, but it's one in which it's peaceful because we all have guns pointed at each other, right? That's not positive peace. That's just the absence of war.
Yeah.
So in this example, right, as Receiver was talking about the way things point, you say, okay, the resolution points one way, right? It says, okay, this is going to lead nuclear weapons and that's going to lead to war. But then we also have our framework which points similar way, which says, oh, we have transformative pacifism, which is upheld by increasing positive peace, and nuclear war and nuclear weapons are directly opposed to that idea. So they're both pointing towards the impacts, right? And they're both supporting the same thing. Does that make some sense?
And I think Warren's there. I think he lagged out. Oh wait, never mind. Also, that was very strategic as a framework because it was, you could use that as a direct answer to the most generic neg on that topic, which was deterrence. So having frameworks which like if you like framework debate. So like for me, I like framework debate. So I wrote that as a good opposition to like the most generic neg on that topic. But also you can make framework not matter as much in the round by doing just like a morality util framework with Jackson. If you go to the neg cases on that topic.
Yeah.
Just going to deterrence. Yeah. Oh yeah, I did life and util. You can even do morality and util. A lot of people just say my value is morality because the resolution says ought, which is a moral obligation. Like it isn't like the best for debating, but like if you just want to get like if you don't want to worry that much about framework debate, it's fine. This is like the framework you can have.
On the spectrum of like purely philosophical and like one person PF, like you can move that wherever you want based on the type of case that you write, but you have to be prepared to debate along the entire spectrum because your opponent can read also whatever they want.
Yeah. And I've said this before, I think, but I think it's important. Like if you want to read a more narrow framework, then you should tend to invest more time in framework, since if you win framework, like the debate's probably already over, since you're probably the only one who's read like a domestic violence impact, or maybe you're the only one who's read like, a due process impact, like some narrow filter which you've applied. Naturally, it's difficult to win that like, domestic violence is the only impact that matters. But if you do win that, and if you spend time trying to win that, then it makes, winning the debate really easy. And I always give the example of libertarianism, because, you can just say like the resolution involves the state. I don't like it when the state does things. And then you can spend like most of your speech just explaining why you don't like it when the state does things. Whereas if you read morality and util, it's probably easier to prove that like, oh, we should try to kill less people. But if you win that, then, there's still some chance that your opponent is able to win under your framework. So it's like, do you want to go for the TKO, or do you just want to do like some like line by line, like back and forth and try to win that way?
Yeah. It can also just depend on the side. Like on the nukes topic, I like doing that line by line style debating on neg, but I preferred the whole like framework debate on app. So like, and you also don't have to subscribe to one, like just go find
it's nothing ideological for me. It's just like whatever is like best, fits my style and my research or whatever.
Yeah, but like Lawrence, if you're coming from PF and you feel more comfortable doing like impact level debates, then yeah, you could just read like morality, util, let's kill less people. But you have to know how to like respond to the more philosophical like things. Any other questions regarding framework so far? It doesn't matter what the question is if you have it. We won't think you're stupid. We all didn't understand this at first when we learned it. So even if it's just something small. No? Okay. Yeah, so this is just kind of, do you want to take this, Receive, or do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, I can take this if you want. Okay. Looks like this slide is about values. So we already sort of discussed the purpose of a value. It's just something that you establish is morally good, some sort of goal, and yeah, an idea which the round should be based upon. So this should be more abstract than the value criterion, which again is a specific measuring stick to see how you get to your value, but it's something that we should value in the abstract. So like, we might not understand the specifics of a situation, but we might say, let's create a moral framework in which we maximize individual liberty, right? And so we might value autonomy. And so it's just sort of an abstract idea that we're trying to achieve somehow, and we can measure, later on using our value criterion, but we have to justify why it's good. So this could actually be a fun exercise if any of you are interested. If you want to provide, we have these examples of morality, justice, procedural justice, democracy, egalitarianism, and distributive justice. You might not know what some of those words mean, but I'm sure that you know what at least one or two of them mean. So if you want to maybe say pick one and say why it might be a good value, something that's morally important, then that would be cool.
She's really popular.
What are you talking about, Lawrence?
Hmm?
Lawrence is in another dimension.
No.
You're not muted, Lawrence.
Oh no. Yeah, no, I'm writing all of this down. You can see.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah,
Hey,
okay.
More spacing, Lawrence.
Yeah. That's a joke.
It was
But
a bad
anyway, anyone?
I would say that
Okay, go ahead.
egalitarianism is like the thing that we should value all life equally, right? So I would say that it's an important value that one should uphold because during these times people are being oppressed, and this is the debate versus Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. And I feel in this scenario, all lives should matter, and we should respect everyone, and they should all have same amount of freedom and stuff. I don't know.
Imagine if a wife asked her husband, "Do you love me?" and he responded, "Baby, I love everybody." Anyway, yeah. So I get what you're saying. Egalitarianism. Why is, I guess, the question that you would need to answer, I think, to take the next step with an LD debate is why is hierarchy bad and why is equality good? Why is that a desirable moral goal?
I don't know. Hierarchy is bad because it says that one person has more power over the other. It allows people to become more corrupt and allows people to feel the need to be powerful, and the other people who aren't as high, they're weaker in the sense in their mindset itself. So I feel it's like communism, the original idea of communism, saying that all people are equal and there's no government or whatever. I don't know.
So, okay, a Marxist ethic, I'm down.
Marxism.
Yeah, okay, interesting.
Thank you,
yeah.
Raj.
Cool.
Anybody else?
Also,
On any of the things here.
try to stay away from saying the phrase "all lives matter" in a debate.
Yeah, don't do that, Raj.
I love everyone. Okay, everyone.
Okay, yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. All right.
No, it's good. It's good. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Just keep the debate as limited as possible because you don't know your judges' predispositions or whatever. But that was fine. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Anyone else?
Doesn't have to be egalitarianism. Anything up here?
Yeah.
Morality doesn't exist. It's a hoax.
What about democracy? Someone want to explain why democracy is a good value?
Democracy is good
why
because it gives everyone a voice.
Why is that good? Lawrence, why is it good for people to have voices?
Because that's what God wants.
All right, nice. That's high key what all moral theory from the 1700s is. Okay. Anyone else for democracy in particular? Or anything. I would a few more folks to chime in. Go ahead.
I guess democracy is interesting in that, if you have an authoritarian government, it can be hard to replace the leader. But with democracy, if you have an incompetent leader, you can replace them. So I think It's nice to have an insurance policy where if the leader is just not good, you can beat them out of office.
I wish.
So that's probably
Yeah,
a more
of course.
that's like a consequential.
I'm cool with that
look
though.
at
I'm cool with
democracy.
that. Yeah.
Of course, that then if your current political leanings might affect that, but
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, like that sort of impacts to effective governance, and I think that's like a fine stopping point. So like I wouldn't ask you another question like why does that matter? Like if we're a government, we should have effective governance or whatever.
Yeah. So maybe in that case, your value criterion would be something like effective governance. You're saying,
Yeah.
oh, if the government works and it's democratic, that's good and upholds democracy.
Anyway,
obviously
Liz.
authoritarianism is the most effective way.
Yeah. Just look
All
at
hail
COVID
Uncle G.
rates. Yeah. Wait, Silas, were you gonna say something else? Or were you just
maybe, can I say why democracy is bad?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, because it justifies like war, and and death is bad.
I get your argument, but why does it justify war?
Well, it's just history because like if you like people have historically used democracy to justify war.
Yeah.
But then most of the time, is that really is that democracy itself? Because a lot of the time, like I think technically the United States
because like
isn't completely
because they're like trying to
isn't a
spread democracy. Everyone's like spread
well, it's not
democracy,
actually.
so war.
If you say you're doing something for something, it doesn't necessarily mean you're doing it. I can say I'm killing this person in Silas's name, but that doesn't mean you're to blame for me killing someone. Right?
This is good. I like
people
debates.
lie.
Yeah, it's a very
people lie all the time.
Very consequential.
Nations
debate.
love to lie about what they're doing. Like people always want to say that like we're bringing freedom. Everybody wants to be the good guy. You're not going to say,
Okay,
"Oh
well-
yeah, I'm killing Jackson because I like killing people." You're going to say, "I'm
Okay,
killing
like the
Jackson
point of
because
the Vietnam War was actually to like try to make it a democratic country rather than a communist country.
No, because we were supporting an authoritarian regime there. What we were trying to do is stop the spread of
All right,
communism. There's a
wait.
difference between that and
Maybe
democracy.
a different way that I'd ask you a question like this, Daniel, would be do you think that having a democracy makes it easier for governments to hide their intentions from their citizens because of the assumption that they're like going to uphold democracy?
Say that one more time. So I
So
can
like
absorb
say
it.
that you're saying that like in a democracy there's like high like public confidence in the government, right? So like people believe that they're being fairly represented. Do you think that it makes it easier for the government to commit like atrocities or start wars if the public feels confident that they're like looking out for their best interests in most cases?
I think that can certainly happen, but I feel the reason why that in democracy won't happen is because most democracies they're pretty large groups, and there's always going to be cynical people who are always watching the government. So you have like watchdogs and all that are there to try to alert the public. So I think it's possible that you can take advantage of the public, but it's eventually going to charade's going to fall through, and they're going to find out that you were continuing Vietnam.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. That's actually that sounded like very similar to like an LB cross-X that I can imagine happening. There's like two people being like,
I'm not a failure.
yeah, that was good. Like more of this, please. That was really good.
And like especially like hearing that like sounds like you guys are like already like you have a knack for like framework style debates. So like you may want to consider doing more like in-depth fill cases when you write and stuff.
Yep. So the value criterion is probably the more complex of the two, just to get a handle on. I mean, a lot of debaters just like choose something like relatively broad, but a really good debater who wants to have like philosophical framework level debates can choose a very specific value criterion, which essentially only links into their contentions and like precludes any chance that their opponent doing the same. It's how the value is achieved. We talked about that. It's how the impacts are weighed insofar as how well do they uphold your value. So a common response in LD is like, you do not actually achieve your value criterion, therefore you do not uphold your value, and therefore you should not win. So like, if back to the example I used with Thorns, because that's the one I think I fleshed out the most about like the libertarian governance, right? Like we should increase autonomy by decreasing state oppression. If my response to your contentions, it might not, like I can make separate responses that like your contentions don't happen or their link chains are improbable. But if I instead say, even if we give your contention full weight, it doesn't actually like decrease state like oppression, right? So you don't actually uphold your value. So there's literally no reason for you to win the round. That's a common response in LD. trying to sever that link between the value criterion and the impacts. They can be broad, they can be very specific. Again, they're the measuring stick that determines how well you or someone has upheld your value. They're generally not the only way to uphold your value, but you said that they are the best way to uphold your value. That these are the most fair, most just, most well-rounded measuring sticks possible for upholding or whatever value you decide to land on. And we have a lot of LV cases from the past 3 or 4 years that we can show you guys if you want to see them later, that are just like, here's the value, here's the value criterion, and here's how it links into the topic.
Yeah, framework is weighing. That is true. Also, weighing is weighing. So yeah, I agree with the bun. The two biggest brains. That's us right now.
At camp, we were talking about framework, and then suddenly one of my lab leaders, he goes up, just steals the person who's speaking his computer, and then makes that meme. So.
Oh, solid. Okay. Yeah. So weighing, we talked about before. I mean, if you're here for our impact calculus tournament, then you certainly got some firsthand experience with it. And so you were comparing impacts in sort of the abstract. And sometimes you needed to establish a framing device in order to, compare them. So, I assume you all were watching the finals. So in that, there was a debate where someone had a high magnitude impact, relating to extinction. Another person had a low magnitude, high probability impact relating to racism. So they both presented arguments for why you should prefer their type of impact. But within Lincoln Douglas, that often happens on the framework level, because your framework determines which impacts you're able to access, and so consequently, basically, if you're comparing two impacts, then it's important. You've already done some of that work when you're saying these are the impacts that matter when you're talking about framework. So yeah, framework is, as we established earlier, is just a lens to view the round through. But you can't win the round just by winning framework. Once you win the framework, you have to prove that the resolution is good under your framework if you're the affirmative, or that the resolution is bad under your framework if you're the negative. But if you choose your framework properly, it can make that job a lot easier, depending on what you want. Another thing that I would say is that debaters are contrarians, so we like to always just say the opposite of what someone else says. But if someone's framework is similar to ours, or at the very least, if it's amenable to our contentions, if our contentions can access their framework very well, it's sometimes strategic to simply concede their framework, because in that case, you would be looking at, if you were to adopt their framework, you'd still have access to your impacts, to your contentions. So it's probably, useless to be arguing about framework. So that's when the frameworks are the same. And I would say if you're attempting to show why your framework is true in the context of, saying my impact matters more than theirs, you need to win that your value is desirable, and you need to win that your value criterion instrumentally achieves your value. And as Jackson was saying, you need to show that your impacts meet your value criterion, but that's sort of more of a line by line thing. And then, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, you can win even if your opponent wins framework. You just have to prove that your contentions outweigh theirs if you apply their framework.
An example of realizing when frameworks are the same is in that one NSTA final round. The AF framework was justice and reducing structural violence, and the NEG framework was justice and increasing human rights. And although there was some debate on it, you can see it was never flushed out, and it was very basic level. But at the end of the affirmative's last speech, he basically said, both of our frameworks are basically saying you're trying to prevent oppression. And he just broke it down to what the frameworks actually mean beyond just the semantics of human rights versus oppression, because there wasn't that much difference that was pointed out in the round.
Yeah. If your opponent is valuing something like autonomy and you're valuing liberty, the amount of distinction that you might be able to discern between autonomy and liberty is very low. So when you're trying to spend your currency in debate, which is how much time you have, you can be okay, I could spend 2 minutes trying to prove some like arbitrary distinction between autonomy and liberty, which like maybe makes it easier for me to win the round, or I could spend 2 minutes on trying to prove that like my impacts outweigh under both frameworks. That second option is much more desirable and a much better use of your time as a debater. Now, if there was like a very big dichotomy between the two frameworks, then yeah, you might want to spend the 2 minutes there to be like, hey, there are some very important distinctions and why I think mine is better. Because you'd be like, okay, because they're so separate, my contentions support mine and my opponent's contentions support theirs, right? So we have to focus on which one is better. But if essentially all the impacts support both of the frameworks, making your impact outweigh is a much more important thing in the debate than winning some arbitrary distinction on framework, because your opponent can just jump ship, spend all of their time at the impact level, and concede your framework and just still totally win.
Also, this is something I think, especially as a novice law people do. When you're in the negative, if the affirmative has this, like, if the affirmative reads morality and util as their framework, and you also have morality and util as your framework, during the 1 and C, because it's pre-written, you'll read through the framework, read through your contentions, and then when you go to their case, you'll say like, oh, I concede their framework. Concede the framework, like, you don't have to read another morality and util framework. Just like concede framework when you're reading through your own case. Like, it's a bit more like thinking other than just reading the doc, but like it saves a lot of time, and it's also really annoying for a judge if they're like, I just heard the same framework, why are you giving me more reasons to prefer this framework?
Yep. So like, rather than, I think, yeah, so to bring the idea back to contrarianism, rather than trying to answer every argument your opponent makes or whatever, like just, prove that they're like totally wrong, recognize which arguments you actually need to prove your opponent wrong about, and realize some places where you can agree upon to make, your job within the debate just easier, by conserving time, conserving prep, conserving your like resources otherwise, I don't know, your strategy. So yeah, just if you don't have to have a debate, don't have it. Makes it easier. Any questions?
Does everyone feel like they have some understanding of what framework is and how it works in a round?
Yes.
Okay. I think I'll pull up one more old LD case and then we can be done for the day. Just to get one more example of framework. That's the wrong drive. Okay, let's look at something. Let's go a bit older.
Oh no, don't pull up this stuff.
I wrote it, it'll be good.
Oh.
Wait a second. That doesn't
Wait, these are the things from Wadsworth, I think, yeah.
Oh, I love this case, yeah.
Oh, this was your crappy case with your debater math contention, right?
Bro, I went 5-0, okay? Yeah, it was like such.
All right, whatever. This is framework. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So this resolution was from like 2 years ago now. It was, in a democracy, the public's right to know ought to be valued above the right to privacy of candidates for public office. So I started off by valuing knowledge. I said this was an app saying that we should like know everything about our candidates and they should not have privacy. So I said I'll value knowledge because like knowledge is good, and here are like some cards about why knowledge is good, and in democracy, like knowledge is good. And then my value criterion was governmental legitimacy, which is essentially the abstract idea that a government is legitimate when people believe it is, when people like essentially consent to being governed by the current government. So the argument here was that if people do not like know about their candidates, then the government can become like corrupt and we might not believe them. Whereas if we know more about the people in our government, it will be more legitimate because we can trust it and its motivations better. And yeah, this was definitely a more philosophical type framework. It wasn't just like morality and util. It's saying knowledge is the most important thing. And especially in a democracy, if the government is legitimate, like that upholds being knowledgeable about our government. I think I actually ended up switching it around later. Whatever. Yeah, this is just another example. Any questions? I know we asked that a lot, but we're just trying to cover all our bases, make sure no one gets left behind.
Does anybody have questions on like semantics of a value criterion versus a value? Like, what makes a value, what makes a value criterion? Because I think that's something my freshman year I was very confused on, and that led to me not understanding framework debate. And that like really hurt me. So that's a key difference to know. Even if you're like, I wasn't paying attention, I zoned out, that's fine. We can go over it again.
If there are no questions, I think we'll wrap up for the day then.
Okay, cool. So schedule for the, oh wait, before we finish, so would everybody be fine if we go into next week in the interest of trying to balance out the days more with activities and stuff, and then also having you all write your own cases?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I would be too, but I won't be here tomorrow.
Okay, that's fine. We're gonna go over strategizing for each speech, so you can watch the video after we post it.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good.
Daniel, Yash, and Silas, is that good for you extending into next week?
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Okay. And then I think Sunny will be here tomorrow because he said he was just catching up on the videos.
Yeah, I saw him at Hardwood Acres.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll probably go to Wednesday, or I think we'll end up, we'll be doing lessons and stuff up to like Monday or Tuesday, and then for the rest of the week we'll just be meeting and like working on case writing with all of you guys, and then have the tournament either Thursday or Friday.
Yeah.
It'll be really like, it won't be a structure.
One thing I think is that I know we're trying to incorporate more exercises after some of the feedback you guys gave us, but there really is no replacement for just debating in rounds and stuff. And right now because of COVID, that's obviously difficult. But we're going to try to, once we get you guys with a good foundation, doing some practice rounds, doing a tournament, maybe just watching some rounds. That's how you learn. You learn through trial and error. You learn through making mistakes and seeing how your opponents beat you. So oftentimes losing is more beneficial than winning, especially to beat like your
Yeah, losing is always more educationally beneficial.
Yeah.
But it's less fun.
We can do like practice rounds and stuff before the tournament. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Because we're going to have 6 people, which is a perfect number, because then we can have 3 rounds and nobody has to wait or anything.
Yeah. And for the actual tournament, I think the plan is to do 5 preliminary rounds in a round robin. So you'll debate every other debater, and then we'll have a final with the 2 people with the highest records. So it'll probably be, we don't know, but like probably be a 5-0 and a 4-1. We'll see.
Yeah. And we'll also, we're going to be using Tabroom. It's not going to be linked to your accounts, but we'll be doing on Tabroom just so you guys can get used to Tabroom. So yeah, that'll be fun. Any questions, schedule, logistics, LD, anything? Cool.
Nice.
If you have any feedback, just let us know. We can fill out the form again. I'll be checking out the form like once a day. And yeah, I'll be sending out a framework quiz. So yeah, I don't think there'll be many more quizzes after this one, just because a lot of the content from now on is like general stuff, it's more general strategy and all. So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. We'll bid you adieu.